In 2010, a team of geneticists published results that quietly sent shockwaves through the academic world. They had done something no scientist had done before. They had extracted, sequenced, and analyzed the DNA of Egypt's most famous pharaoh, Tutankhamun. The results were peer-reviewed. The methodology was rigorous, the science was sound. And yet, what came back from the lab did not match what anyone expected, not even close. To understand why those results mattered, you first need to understand who Tutankhamun was, and more importantly, who we thought he was. He was a boy king. He ascended to the throne of ancient Egypt somewhere around 1332 BCE, at an age most historians estimate between 8 and 10 years old. He ruled for less than a decade, and then, at approximately 19 years of age, he died. That should have been the end of his story. In the long sweep of Egyptian history, Tutankhamun was not considered a great pharaoh. He did not wage legendary wars. He did not construct monuments that dwarfed their predecessors. By the standards of the ancient world, his reign was brief, modest, and largely administrative, focused on reversing the controversial religious reforms his father had set in motion. And yet, today, his name is one of the most recognized in all of human history. Why? Because of what happened in November 1922 in the Valley of the Kings, on the west bank of the Nile. Howard Carter had been searching for years. Funded by the wealthy British aristocrat Lord Carnarvon, he had spent season after season digging through the Valley of the Kings, an ancient royal necropolis carved into the Theban hills, where pharaoh after pharaoh had been laid to rest in elaborate hidden tombs. By 1922, many colleagues had given up hope. The valley had been picked over for centuries. Tomb robbers had looted most chambers long before modern archaeology arrived. The consensus among Egyptologists was that there was nothing significant left to find. Carter disagreed. On the 4th of November, one of his workers uncovered a stone step beneath the rubble, then another, a staircase descending into the earth. Carter sent a telegram to Carnarvon immediately. Within days, Carnarvon had traveled from England to Egypt, and together, on the 26th of November, they made a small breach in the sealed doorway at the bottom of those steps. Carter held a candle up to the opening. Carnarvon, standing behind him, asked, "Can you see anything?" Carter paused. Then he said quietly, "Yes, wonderful things." What they found inside that tomb changed archaeology forever. Gold everywhere. Furniture, chariots, weapons, statues, jewelry. Over 5,000 objects, many of them perfectly preserved after more than 3,000 years. And at the center of it all, a series of nested coffins, the innermost crafted from solid gold, containing the mummified body of the boy king himself. The world had never seen anything like it. For decades, Tutankhamun was studied through the lens of archaeology. Historians analyzed his artifacts. Anthropologists measured his remains. Egyptologists deciphered the inscriptions on his tomb walls. Slowly, a picture emerged of a young ruler caught between competing political forces, surrounded by powerful advisors, navigating one of the most turbulent periods in Egyptian royal history. But there were gaps, significant ones. His parentage, for instance, was never definitively established. Ancient inscriptions referred to him as the son of a king. But which king? His own inscriptions were vague. Some records from his reign had been deliberately altered after his death. His name had been erased from certain official lists. It was as if someone, at some point, had made a systematic effort to minimize his place in history. Why? That question lingered for generations. By the late 2000s, advances in genetic technology had reached a point where scientists believed they could extract usable DNA from ancient mummified remains, something that had previously seemed impossible given the degradation that occurs over thousands of years. Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities authorized a major study. A team led by Dr. Zahi Hawass, in collaboration with geneticists and forensic specialists, was given access to 11 royal mummies, including Tutankhamun himself. The goal was straightforward: use modern science to answer the questions that archaeology alone could not. Establish family relationships, identify diseases, reconstruct the biological reality behind the historical record. What they found exceeded anything they had prepared for. The team was able to identify a probable family group across several generations. Tutankhamun's father was identified with high confidence as the mummy known as KV55, widely believed to be the pharaoh Akhenaten, the so-called heretic king, who had upended Egyptian religion by replacing the traditional pantheon with the worship of a single solar deity. His mother was identified as the mummy from tomb K535, referred to in the study as the younger lady. She appeared to be a full sister of K555. In other words, Tutankhamun was almost certainly the product of a sibling union, brother and sister, both of royal blood. This was not entirely shocking in isolation. The Egyptian royal family had a documented history of close relative marriages, largely to preserve dynastic bloodlines and consolidate power. It was a practice that existed to varying degrees across many ancient royal lineages around the world. But that was not the part that stopped people cold. The haplogroup results were. A haplogroup is essentially a deep genetic lineage marker, a branch on the human family tree that traces ancestry back tens of thousands of years, long before recorded history. When scientists analyzed Tutankhamun's paternal haplogroup, the markers pointed to a lineage most commonly found today in Western Europe, specifically the haplogroup R1b1a2, a genetic signature prevalent across parts of modern-day France, Spain, the British Isles, and Western Europe in general. This was profoundly unexpected. Ancient Egypt sat at the crossroads of Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean world. The genetic signatures most commonly associated with ancient Egyptian royal lineages had, up to that point, clustered around North African and Near Eastern ancestral groups, not Western European ones. How do you explain a haplogroup in a 3,000-year-old Egyptian pharaoh that today shows up most frequently in populations thousands of miles away from Egypt? The honest answer is, scientists are still working on it. There are several serious grounded possibilities that researchers have put forward. The first involves the ancient migration patterns of populations that predated dynastic Egypt by thousands of years. Modern haplogroup distribution does not reflect ancient distribution. Populations move, they spread, contract, intermix, and vanish. A haplogroup that is now associated with Western Europe may have once been significantly more widespread across North Africa and the ancient Near East, and may have gradually receded from those regions over time due to subsequent waves of migration and population replacement. This is not a fringe theory. It is well supported by broader ancient DNA research, which has repeatedly shown that the genetic landscape of any given region can look dramatically different across different time periods. The people who live somewhere today are not necessarily the direct descendants of the people who lived there thousands of years ago. Populations shift. A second possibility involves the royal lineage itself. The Egyptian royal family was not ethnically uniform across its long history. Egypt was conquered, influenced, and at times ruled by outside groups: Nubians, Hyksos, Libyans, and later Persians and Greeks. Royal bloodlines were occasionally introduced from foreign dynasties through strategic marriages. The specific ancestral thread that carried the R1b haplogroup into the Egyptian royal line may have entered through a branch that remains archaeologically invisible, an ancestor whose identity was never preserved in surviving records, or whose records were deliberately destroyed. And records were destroyed. That is not speculation. It is historical fact. After Tutankhamun's death, his name and the names of several pharaohs from his immediate dynastic period were systematically removed from official king lists. The pharaoh Horemheb, who came to power shortly after Tutankhamun's reign, conducted a broad erasure, attributing the deeds of the previous rulers to himself and purging their monuments. Akhenaten, Tutankhamun's probable father, was especially targeted. His temples were dismantled, his inscriptions were chiseled out. His very existence was, for a time, expunged from the official record. We do not know the full extent of what was lost. When you erase a name from stone, you erase a data point. When you erase a dynasty, you erase a branch of the historical tree. And when that branch carried genetic information that might explain where certain lineages came from and how they arrived, its absence leaves a gap that no amount of modern DNA analysis can fully fill. This is the deeper issue. The DNA results from Tutankhamun are not impossible in the sense of defying science. They are not inexplicable. They do not require extraordinary explanations. What they require is a far more honest acknowledgement of how much we do not know about the ancient world, about who moved where, when, and why, about which bloodlines crossed which borders, and about what was deliberately hidden from posterity by the very people who shaped the historical record. Ancient Egypt is one of the most extensively documented civilizations in all of human history, and yet, there are chapters of its story that remain completely dark. Entire reigns reduced to a single inscription. Entire lineages reduced to a mummy with no name. Entire centuries where the written record thins to almost nothing. Tutankhamun was buried with extraordinary care. His tomb was sealed with precision. His body was wrapped in linen and placed inside layers of gold. Whoever prepared his burial clearly intended for him to endure, and he did endure. For over 3,000 years, he lay undisturbed beneath the desert floor. But the story they told about him, the official story, carved into stone and painted onto walls, was not complete. It was curated, edited, shaped by the political needs of people who came after him. The DNA does not lie, but it also does not explain itself. It simply sits there in a laboratory report, pointing toward a genetic lineage that does not fit the expected picture, and reminding us, quietly and with no drama, that the ancient world was more complicated, more connected, and more mysterious than we have ever been comfortable admitting. We found the tomb. We opened the coffin. We ran the tests. And somehow, after all of that, the boy king still has not fully revealed himself. Perhaps he never will.